Welcome to the morning after Wildcard Pod edition. We will go kind of quick here because there's a lot of stuff to cover. All fantasy team, fantasy honors today, so we'll get into the week that was here in the CFFL. So week 15, we saw the Bruisers take down the Minotaurs 66.4 to 24. And in case you're wondering, 24 is really bad. And I know this gets said a lot. It's kind of a joke in the league, but it's Charlie, that story about your fantasy team. The Joe Burrow injury hurt, but that's a record setter. 27 points was the previous low in 2002 by the Horn Dogs. But remember, that was before flex. That was before half-point scoring. So that 27 probably would have been at least in the low 30s nowadays. But that was a rough one, Charlie. Hopefully forget about that one for next year. Maulers take down the Gargactyls 84 to 29.3. Griff, you're lucky. Charlie had a terrible week. Otherwise, you would have set the record in the new era of fantasy. Badgers took down the Horn Dogs. Both teams still advanced in the consolation round. Badgers take on the lower seed, so they'll take on Dr. Dangerous. Horn Dogs will take on the Colts in the next round for the ever-prestigious Jim Shavino Memorial Consolation Belt. There we are. So we get to the fantasy honors right away. Start out with an award. The Dave Pujic Award, the most transactions on the year, goes to the Badgers. That had been my award every year since David had left the league. I think I finished 5th this year, so it's crazy that I was not near the top. So thank you for getting that award away from me, Bites. I'm happy to not have it this year. I'm happy to give it to someone else. So it's nice to see. Comeback Player of the Year, I'm going to go to Debo. He was the 4th wide receiver this year, 9.3 points per week, up from 5.3 last year. Started a little slow, but the last couple weeks he's been arguably the best receiver in fantasy. I don't think there's really anybody. CeeDee Lamb maybe, but Debo's been fantastic. Next up, we had the Kurt Warner Award for the best undrafted free agent. Puka was up for that. He was close. Puka technically was a little higher as points on the year. But Tank Dell was a little more impactful in the games he played, so I went Tank Dell. 13th wide receiver at 7.3 points per week. So a really good week from Tank Dell there. Really good year, from Tank Dell there for the Horn Dogs. Next up, we had the Tom Brady Award for the best late-round draft pick. This was pretty easy. Kyren Williams, 15th round, 12.2 points per week, and the running back number 3. Tremendous years from Mostert and CMC are the only reason he wasn't the number 1 running back. So that was a solid, tremendous pick in the 15th round. The next one is one that a lot of people could have got. First round bust award, I went with Austin Eckler. He was the 2nd pick. He was running back 25. He had averaged 7.3 points per week. He was higher than Bijan. He was higher than Tony Pollard, on my guy. But being the 2nd pick, and especially at the end of the year, he was just horrendous. He had 1 week where he scored 2 touchdowns, I think, to boost him. But really disappointing year from Austin Eckler. Big reason the Black Dingos didn't have as good a year as I think he had hoped for, and I thought he probably would have had. Next is the new award I created this year, and this year I went with the best general manager. The Horn Dogs went 7-6-1. They lost first-round pick Nick Chubb early in the year. 5th-round pick was Cam Akers, who was horrendous. Other early picks included A.J. Dillon, who's just not really good at football. DK Metcalf didn't put up that many points. He has a couple good games a year, and C.J. Olave was part of a trade that Scott had made, which I don't know how about that one went at the time. Looked like it okay in the long run. Everything kind of evened out, but didn't look like it was a real positive move out of desperation. By the time of his move, I figured he might win another game or two. Ended up going 7-6-1. Things kind of broke his way there, but he hung in there. Tank Dell was a big reason. A couple other guys through the year. Justin Fields coming back helped. But general manager of the year goes to Scott. Now onto the all fantasy team, and then finally the MVP. All fantasy team, Josh Allen, 19.1 points per game. Last year, the top quarterback was also 19.1 points per game, Patrick Mahomes. Chris's Cardinals, Josh Allen, quarterback of the year. Running back number 1, team Price is Right, Christian McCaffrey, 14 points per game. Last year, the number 1 running back was Josh Jacobs at 11.8. So interesting to see an increase there at running back 1. Running back 2 went to Raheem Mostert, 12.2 points per game. Last year, Derrick Henry was the number running back 2 at 11.3. So Bites his Badgers, gets running back number 2. Wide receiver number 1, Mike Smollers. Mike Smollers also had the 1 receiver last year, number 1. 12 points per game from Tyreek. Last year, Devontae had 10.7. Tyreek was tremendous this year. Anytime he played, pretty much seemed like he always scored a touchdown and always over 100 yards. So a really good year from Tyreek there. Next up, we had CeeDee Lamb as the receiver number 2 at 9.6 points per game. Last year, Travis Kelce was wide receiver 2 at 9.8. Dr. Dangerous, he started out slow, but really heck of a year from CeeDee Lamb, especially on the stretch. He and Debo were kind of fighting for wide receiver number 1. Wide receiver 3 is not Debo. He was so bad at the start of the year, and he missed a few games, so he was not able to get it. It was a close call, but I went with Mike Evans as wide receiver number 3 from Hulsey's Colts at 8.6 points per game. Last year, wide receiver number 3 was Justin Jefferson at 9.7. Mike Evans, tremendous year, a lot of touchdowns, and quite a few yards. Flex of the year went to Kyren Williams from Team Price is Right, the best late round pick, the Tom Brady Award winner. Nick Chubb last year was the top flex at 10.8. This year, Kyren Williams at 12.2, which would have been running back number 1 last year. Just says how that league changed a little bit this year with running backs kind of reasserting themselves as dominant, although it was a wide gap between those top couple and then everybody else. The Ray Finkel Award for the kicker of the year went to Brandon Aubrey at 9.9 points per game for the Gargoyles. Best kicker I've seen in a long time. Just man's automatic and he can kick it from a mile. Last year, Tyler Bass was the kicker of the year at 8.8. A dark horse for the MVP, in my opinion, was the Cowboys defense at 9.4 points per game. They were just so much better, especially when they were over 10 points a game. Still a point and a half better than last year's defense of the year, New England. So big year there for the Horned Dogs, getting the defense of the year. Like I said, they were dark horse for fantasy, probably would say like 5th. Christian McCaffrey probably finished 2nd for me in fantasy MVP. Kyren Williams was up there as probably top 4, and then Raheem Mostert was another one I thought of. Technically, the most valuable player probably should have been Kyren Williams because he was picked so late. But I did it as a guy who really carried his team, and he was better than the other people at his position by a substantial amount. So the first time in a long time, we'll have a receiver as our fantasy MVP, Mike Smollers, Tyreek Hill, 12 points per game at the 9th pick. Last year, Josh Jacobs won the award with 11.8 points per game because the running backs were so darn bad. He was just so much better than everybody else. But Tyreek kind of carried his team, as I believe last year Josh Jacobs did with the little big men. But just games he would have just taking over there was huge. Breakdown of the prize money, and then we're almost done. Most points in the year, like I said last week, myself and Michael's prize money there. We're pushing the high points to next year, the extra $10. Whoever wins next year will get 20. Gargactyls and Minotaurs have each earned a minimum of 25. Might be 20. Double check on the main page because I had to change some stuff with the engraving change this year. They charge a little more than my old guy did, who since retired. So they'll each get 20, and then we'll also have a 5th place game this week for I think an additional $30. Double check on that. Should have looked into that first. But you guys will be playing this week, just one more week. Whoever gets it gets that 30, and then the other one take home the 20. Cardinals, Maulers, Bruisers, and Team Prices Right have each earned at least another $75 for 4th. Going up to, I believe, $250 for the ultimate winner. I think $100, $125 for 3rd, $175, I think, for 2nd. Again, check on the main page. And then also the Little Big Men and the Dingoes, who've pretty much been the rear of the league this year. The caboose, if you will, falling behind. They do play the next 2 weeks for the Toilet Bowl to see who finishes dead last, and then we do have the consolation round still going on. But the game of the week this coming week and the 5th place game, the big game of the week is the Wildcard. No longer the Wildcard pod, it is now the Super Bowl pod. So it's the Cardinals, the Maulers, the Bruisers, and the Team Prices Right. My Super Bowl predictions were the Cardinals, the Bruisers, the Badgers, and Dr. Dangerous. 2 out of 4. Usually I get 3 out of 4, so I'm not as good this year. Down this year in my predictions. Home field advantage, I have 7.8 points, 3.1 for the Maulers, and 1.9 for Team Prices Right. So that is the show this week. We'll have one more show after the Super Bowl. Next week I'll send a quick email out reminding everybody about things. I don't think there'll be too much to remind people about, but just kind of let you know where the standings are and how things are looking. And setting up the Consolation OK Bowl number 14, 15, something like that. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Have a Merry Christmas. I'll be talking to you guys, sending out an email on probably Boxing Day. So thanks for tuning in, and best of luck to everybody who's not playing in the Super Bowl pod. Hope the Super Bowl had all us bad weeks except for me.